Hey everyone, I'm Russell. Welcome. Welcome. I'm an addict. All right, let's start all that again, shall we? Hi everyone. I'm Russell. I'm an addict. 3 years clean, 3 years in recovery, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what to expect in early recovery. For those of you that have seen the previous video, you've seen the previous video, so it's fine. For those of you that haven't seen the previous video, there's a link. There's no link. I don't know how to do that, but if you go onto this channel, there is a video talking about how to, if you're in the grip of addiction, if you're struggling with your behaviors, how it might be possible to get into a rehab or a free rehab or a nominal fee rehab, a very affordable one. Even if you're on benefits, this is a rehab you can afford. Or fellowship, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, etc., etc. So yeah, go onto the channel. Whilst you're there, like, share, and subscribe. See how I did that? That was pretty good. And yeah, let's get into it. So I've got some notes in. For full disclosure, these are my notes. So if I'm going to leave them here so I can glance down at them from time to time, but they're all, like me, scattershot all over the place. I'm just going to try and talk a little bit. If I can somehow stretch these 30 words into 10 minutes, 15 minutes of your time, then I'll be grateful. So yeah, what to expect in early recovery. Well, the first thing for me, and the first thing, I think I've seen it quite a lot in other addicts, is that you need that obsession to lift, that obsession to use. So for me, it was about 60 days. There were the first 60 days I was in the residential rehab. I wasn't climbing the walls or anything like that, but I was all itchy, and I made the right move, and I couldn't sleep. And when I did finally sleep, I was dreaming about drugs and dreaming about horrible things I'd done, or horrible things that I was worried were going to happen to me. And I think it was around day 60, that obsession eased off a little bit, and I was able to start thinking, okay, well, I started to feel clean. I think that's the best way of putting it. I started to feel like I was in recovery and started to feel like I was actually getting somewhere. And then it was time to start looking inward. And that's where the trouble starts, really, when we start to look at our part in how we got to where we got to. I can't speak for everyone, and I'm not sure about you, but I blamed everyone but myself for my addictions. I was the son of addicts. You're raised by addicts in a family of addicts. I was surrounded by addicts my whole life. I got too much love, or I didn't get enough love, or I wasn't given this, and everybody else seemed to be doing better than me, and my wife left me, and there was always a reason. There was always something to point the finger at when it came to my using, until that obsession lifted, until I was able to start looking at it honestly and rationally, and I learned how to do that through the love and compassion and care of being around other addicts. There is no better cure for addiction than being around other people in recovery, especially early days. So one thing I did want to talk about was a bit of a warning. Be careful, be on the lookout for, when you get to whatever your period of time is where you're starting to feel like you've sort of cracked it. Beware of feeling cured. That is a dangerous path. And it's not, dangerous isn't the right word. It is a lethal path to go down as an addict, because when we start to feel we're cured, we start to feel like we can use again. I touched on it in my last video. Like you and I, as addicts, can never ever use drugs again successfully, or drink, or whatever your poison is. You can't do it anymore. That's that. It's over. And there are other behaviors that come with that. The drinking and the drugging were just, for me specifically, and I'm almost certain, I can not point the finger, but I'm almost certain that it's the same for you as well. The drinking and the drugging are just a symptom of the overarching disease, the spiritual malady that we all carry. And for me, a whole bunch of other behaviors came out that I wasn't aware of, or at least I was aware of them, but I didn't, because they weren't drinking or drugging, I didn't think they were a problem, or I thought they were at least separate. And that if I could just leave alone the substances, then everything else will be okay. And it isn't that way at all. I mean, some good examples, and this is not me per se, but they're quite common. So gambling, sex or pornography addiction, lying, shopping, over shopping, anything that people can be addicted to is a symptom of the overarching disease. It's not the case that, you know, I look at a shopping addict the same way that I would look at a sex addict. I look at a sex addict the same way I would look at a drug addict. That is to say, the way that I look at myself, an addict. And all these behaviors and all these other symptoms did start to manifest themselves in my early days of recovery. So it's just something I definitely think you should watch out for. I got quite lucky in that my obsessions became the gym and eating right, and I wanted to get down to 8% body fat, and I wanted to be really muscular doing it, and so I was doing everything I could around that. I was constantly online. I would just spend all my day watching YouTube videos on lifting weights, and when I wasn't, or on diet, and when I wasn't doing that, I was at the gym lifting weights, or I was cooking my pots. I mean, I still to this day I meal prep, so I have these little pots, they're all full of in the fridge over there. But I'm not calorie counting anymore. I like the ease of cooking in batch. I don't like, because my front room and my kitchen are basically the same living area, this upstairs area here. I don't like the smell of cooking all the time. So I tend to just cook once a week and then nuke everything. And it works well for me. But I've seen quite a few. I knew one guy in particular who was being, oh man, he was being a total bastard to the whole world, but he was clean, and that was enough for him. And we lived together, and I would say to him, mate, like, you are lying, cheating, borrowing money, stealing, committing crime. You know, you're doing all these terrible things. Your recovery, which is what you're here for, is taking a hit. And he'd be like, yeah, but I'm clean. It's not enough. It's not enough to. It's a good baseline. It's a good starting position to have. Like, not taking drugs, not drinking. It's excellent, and I'm here for it all day. But then, once you're clean, once you're free of that obsession, then it is time to start working on other things. Coincidentally, that chap's in prison now, unfortunately, because he was a good, for the most part, he was a decent guy until the truth came out about all the stuff that he was doing secretly. But because he was clean, it was kind of justified, because he spent so long of his, and I get it, because I've spent the exact same amount of time as he did, doing the exact same things as he did. But I wasn't, because I did the early work, and because I was lucky enough to have addicts around me that were doing the early work and pointing me in the direction of the early work and the inward stuff. I didn't have to go down any of those routes of lying and cheating and stealing and stuff. So what, that was the other thing. I read it, and I don't mean, normally when I say I read something, what I mean is I watched a YouTube video on it, but this is something specifically I read that, you know, depending on how long you've been in the madness, depending on how long you've been doing all these drugs and doing all these horrific behaviors, once you get out of it, it takes a proportionate amount of time to the time you were in it to rewire your brain and rewire your heart and rewire your soul. And I've only read this recently, but it makes perfect sense. It makes absolutely perfect sense, because even though I was clean, and even though I felt good about that, I wasn't taking drugs, I still had loads of different things going on. I still had triggers all over the place. And it wasn't until about a year of being clean that I was able to watch TV properly, because every time I watched TV, there would be something on there that triggered me. Every time I watched a stand-up comic, it would remind me of some, I'm not really going to get into it ever, but that something happened that was one of the catalysts of my addiction going into overdrive. I was sort of managing what I was doing, and then something happened, and then let's call it trauma, but small t trauma. And it sort of catapulted me into a cycle of self-destruction, like on the fast track to self-destruction. And so, but that stand-up comedy was a trigger, bizarrely a trigger. Certain TV shows were a trigger. I found I couldn't focus on PlayStation. I couldn't focus on watching anything or doing anything. All I wanted to do was distract. It was constant distraction. I would get triggered and then I would need a distraction. And so one weekend I decided I had enough, and I read a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. I'm going to do a video on books that people need to read at some point. I'm not telling you need to read this book, but there are certain books, especially that book. Again, I'm going to say the title again, The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And I think it should be required reading for anyone in recovery. I've read it 6 times. I bought 4 copies and I've given 3 of them away. I have it on audiobook. They should read it at school. The book is amazing, and it deals a lot with just allowing things to be, relax and release. And again, I'll get into a full breakdown of it at some point when I've worked out what the rules are and what I can and actually can't talk about, whether I could be in trouble for talking about this book. But surely not if it generates sales. I don't know. But what was I saying about? I was talking about the untethered soul. One of the things he talks about is sitting in the fire. We have these feelings no matter what, and our job is not to try and distract from them. And he described it as he described all these feelings and triggers as blockages in a river of energy. I'm the river of energy, and then within this river, this stream, which should be constantly flowing perfectly, are these blockages that I've built up over the years. And these blockages can be triggered by anything. A red Seat Ibiza car, a skip lorry, anything that could remind you of past things that bother you. He likened it to, he did an analogy of, imagine you're sat in your car one day and you're behind another car at the traffic lights, and you look at the car and it reminds you, it looks like your girlfriend's car. And then you look and there's a girl in the driver's seat, and then in the passenger seat is a male, and that male leans over and kisses the girl. Now, it's not them, but to you, it looked like them and it reminded you of them. And it puts you in a bad mood for the rest of the day. And what this book is trying to teach is to relax and release. It's okay. Whatever is going on in that car, it's nothing to do with me. And the more we can do that, the more we can dissolve these blockages that exist within us. And it was about a year in when I read that book. And so I decided that the only thing for me to do was to sit on the sofa with a pack of cigarettes and a pot of coffee and work through it. And so I did just that. I spent an entire weekend sat on my sofa, no TV, and just allowed those thoughts to be, all those intrusive thoughts, all those horrible things that I didn't want to deal with. I just allowed them to be. And every time they came up, I'd get that hot ball of anger and of pain that had lived inside me for so long. And I would just relax and release. And I still have to do it to this day. I mean, it's 2 years since then, but that weekend was a real turning point for me in my recovery. And it took me a year to get there. And that was part of my brain rewiring itself. And I imagine it's something everybody has to go through. So, then what can you do for yourself whilst you're in your recovery? Ideally, get a morning routine. They'll try and teach you that in Narcotics Anonymous anyway, and I presume Alcoholics Anonymous. Morning routines are really, really important. That said, mine isn't so crash hot. I mean, I get up in the morning, I pee, I smoke a cigarette, I have a cup of coffee, I take the dog for a walk, I come back. If it's a morning of more often than not, I train in the evening, but some mornings I want to get it done in the morning. I might have to go to town. It's no big deal, but the key for me with a morning routine is it's not the end of the world if you don't do it. I've seen a lot of people, especially in the meetings, and you'll hear them say things like, "Oh, I couldn't do my morning routine this morning and my head fell off." You can't afford for that. You can't afford for that to be the case. I don't think. I mean, I certainly can't afford for it to be the case. I don't want to be beholden to a routine every morning or something that simply must get done. Otherwise, my recovery takes a hit. When I was first in recovery, I was kind of like that. I used to get up. I can't tell you the entire routine, but there were certain things that I had to have done before I left to go to the gym, and I just kept adding to it. So I was doing breath work, I was doing meditation, and then my morning ablutions, prayer, eating right, protein shake, all that. And then, but that had to be an hour and a half before I couldn't, yoga, crikey. And I just kept adding all these things that all take 30 minutes. And it got to the point where it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon before I could even leave. And so I stripped it all back. I was like, again, because I always end up going back. It always goes back to the gym. So I was like, right, I'm just going to concentrate on the gym. I'm just going to concentrate on my eating. So I did that. And then by and large, especially with the meditation, I don't need to do it as much. I mean, I certainly definitely don't do it every day. I'll do it as and when I need it. And I know when I need it because it'll be an hour since I got up and I haven't done anything. I've just been sat on the sofa stewing about nonsense. Normally it's about a bad dream I've had or something like that. Oh, do you know what? Well, fuck her for saying that to me in my dream. A dream. I'm dreaming about somebody I don't even talk to anymore. But my head will latch onto, oh, here we go. This is something we can sort of pummel him with. And I'll start thinking, or the conversations I wish I could have, or this is the revenge I would like to get. That is literally just reminded me of another video I'm going to do. So not on revenge, about not getting revenge. So yeah, like if it works for you, do meditation. Don't beat yourself up if it doesn't work. You will hear there's loads of stuff on YouTube like you must meditate, you must do breath work. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. You've got your baseline. Your baseline is you're clean. You're not picking up drugs or alcohol. And then whatever you need to do in order to keep a balance of not picking up the drugs and at the same time not allowing other horrific behaviors to manifest. I mean, there are certain things you can, truth time, I play too much PlayStation, but I think that's one that it's all right for me to have. And it's something I'll work on in the future, but I don't do a lot of I listed the things that the other chap was doing. I don't do any of those things. So, I mean, that, they're not picking up, and I think that's enough. And that's why I kind of hope that everybody else gets to as well. I just want everyone to feel the same balance and the same, it's not total inner peace. Goodness, that's just reminded me of something else that we can talk about. But it's not complete and utter inner peace. It's not total recovery. It's not perfect. It's 80-20. 80% of the time I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing exactly what needs to be done. And 20% of the time I'm not. I'm just doing whatever I do. None of it's illegal. None of it's hurting anyone else. None of it's hurting me. None of it's immoral. None of it could be seen as a sin. So yeah, I think it's okay. And again, that's the balance I would advise you to try and find. So, do you know what? I think 18 minutes, I've been waffling on long enough. I may not even post this. I'm going to watch it back in a second and then make a decision. So as ever, if you feel like you got anything from this, or if you've got any suggestions about what I can talk about, because it's been 2 days and I've gone around and around the mulberry bush. I really can't settle on one different thing that I could talk about. Which I think is reflected in the way that I'm talking. Again, scattershot all over the place. Have a good weekend. No, try not to cause any carnage. For any of us that are watching this, that are all recovering addicts, it's Saturday. Think back to the carnage that you would have been causing back in your madness, back in your addiction. I mean, it's horrific to think about, but at the same time, you're not. So that's good. Have good weekends. Like, share and subscribe, all that stuff. And I will catch you in the next one. Cheers. Later.